All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Magith Noohukhan. I'm the Evangelist at Braze, meaning I represent our company globally. I'm regularly speaking at conferences and events, educating consumers about what brilliant customer engagement looks like and what you need to create that excellence with your customers. And as I mentioned, I'm into customer engagement. Braze is a customer engagement platform, and our vision is to forge human connections between consumers and their brands they love through relevant and memorable customer experiences. With that, I'm very excited to welcome my guest today, Kate Huyett, Chief Marketing Officer at Bombas. Kate, welcome to the show. Could you please?
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Could you please say a few words about yourself and your role at Bombas, please?
Yeah, so my name's Kate Huyett. I've been with Bombas about 8 years. And in my role as Chief Customer Officer, I oversee acquisition marketing, retention marketing, our site experience, our customer support, our consumer insights, as well as our data and analytics teams.
Well, fantastic. Kate, as I was, browsing through your Bombas website, I couldn't stop thinking about the mission that you have at your company. One purchase to one donated. I would love to hear more about that. I'm sure the audience would too. So could you please say a few words about that too?
Yeah, absolutely. So Bombas is a company that was founded because of a quote that one of our founders saw on Facebook, that socks were the #1 most requested clothing item in homeless shelters, and it was around the time Tums was getting big. And so they thought, maybe this shortage of socks in shelters could be solved through something like the Tums model. And so that's really where we started. That's been baked in to the DNA of the company from day one. And as we've done product expansion, we've launched in the last few years underwear, which is the #2 most requested clothing item in homeless shelters, and t-shirts, which is the #3 most requested clothing item in homeless shelters. That's continued to be at the core of what we do. Something most folks don't realize about that one-for-one model is that we actually custom design those donation products. We work with our giving partners to understand what the needs of the community that they serve are. And so you'll notice that if you see our donation product, it's generally a bit thicker. So it's our normal product is very durable, it's very high quality, but that's even more true for the donation product. It's typically in darker colors that don't show dirt, because often folks in the communities we serve don't have easy access to laundry. So all of the thoughtfulness from the design perspective that goes into designing for our paying customers goes into the items that we donate as well. And I'm incredibly proud to say that, in the 8 years I've been with Bombas, we've donated more than 75 million items to giving partners all over the country. We have more than 3,500 of them.
Oh, wow, it's more than 75 million donated. And what a great thought process in designing, what you do and then how it is helping the community out there as well. Thank you again, for sharing that insights to the audience. And Kate, for the rest of the time that we have, I would love to divide the conversation into 4 different areas. First, I would love to talk a little bit about the customer experience, right? How are you elevating customer experiences? And then I would love to touch on customer engagement. You also talked about you are responsible for acquisition marketing, retention marketing, so we can dive into that. And then we can also talk about the innovation and the future of retail. In innovation, we can talk about the technologies that you are excited about, the trend and the opportunities, what lies ahead. With that, talking about elevating customer experiences, Kate, the first thought that comes to my mind is that I sincerely believe that consumer behavior and expectations regularly change, right? Whether there is a pandemic or not. So this is relative for all the industries out there, and it's up to the brands how you are keeping up with that change to create that experiences that they deserve, right? So the question that I want to ask you is, how have you dealt with the changing consumer behavior and preferences for your consumers over the past few years?
Yeah, so I think I'm going to answer that question a little bit by what has and what hasn't changed, because I think there's a Jeff Bezos quote around, customers are always going to want lower prices, more selection, and faster shipping. And I think, for us, interpreting that for our DNA we're really focused on offering high quality product, and we want to attract consumers that really value that quality. And mission, there is a change in consumer preference for more spending dollars with more mission-oriented companies. And I would say that's a trend. We're seeing more people operate that way. But, Bombas has been around 8 years, and it was true 8 years ago. I think it will hopefully still be true in the future. It's a trend, but it seems like a much sort of longer standing trend. And so we're really focused on, for the things that we think are static, or that sort of consumers will always value, we're focused on continuing to deliver excellence in those areas. I'd say probably the biggest thing, at least from my vantage point, the two biggest things are just, probably the continued dominance of mobile. Just again, a very long-standing, decade plus long trend, but that's still continuing, and we design everything completely mobile first at this point, and have actually for quite some time. And I think the other thing that we're really focused on is how are people consuming content differently. Acquisition marketing in particular is a really pretty major driver for our business, and so being really on top of where are consumers spending time, and are we showing up in those places? Some are harder, some are harder places to show up, particularly in an ROI positive way. But even if we can't yet be there in sort of the scale or with the efficiency that we want to, we always are keeping an eye on where consumers are spending time, and also how they are preferring to consume content. Obviously the TikTok short form video has really changed what customers are watching in the last couple of years.
Yeah, fantastic, Kate. I was making notes as you were speaking. Dominance on mobile, of course, and then also the way that consumers consume content has changed over the last several years. I couldn't stop thinking about how in the world and in the past, several years ago, email was the only way that brands could engage consumers digitally, right? But that has changed as well. We have evolution of devices, right? Smartphones, smartwatches, tablets, PCs, and also the channels on the other side that has been evolving as well, right? So the question as a brand, like you talked about, meeting consumers where they want. And I also believe, Kate, that platforms and channels and devices will keep on evolving in the future as well, whether it's short form TikTok videos or whatever that is. And then I really liked it how you started the conversation about Jeff Bezos' quote about what doesn't change, right? Consumers are not going to come and tell you, hey, you know what, we love your product, but you know what, we are happy to pay for shipping, right? Nobody's going to say that. Right? People love free shipping, and that trend and the quality of the product that doesn't change as well. So Kate, now let's jump into the customer engagement side, right? So to start with activation side, in what way is Bombas working to stand out in the eye of the consumer, and what are you currently doing in terms of your e-commerce strategies? So
I think I mentioned earlier the mission and product and great quality product are big value props. That mission piece, we believe, does really set us apart. There's a growing number of companies who have a mission that is very central to what they do. Patagonia, I would say, is probably like the gold standard in that area. But we really make mission a part of everything we do, from like our interviewing and hiring process to our onboarding process internally. It's highlighted very heavily in both our acquisition and retention marketing efforts. We have content, on our site related to the mission. We launched at one point we have a giving directory on our site where you can actually go plug in your zip code and a radius and see who are the Bombas, giving partners near me. And it, notes whether they're accepting other forms of donations or whether they're sort of actively looking for volunteers. So we really look to raise awareness about the mission and also help people get engaged related to that. So that's probably that's huge. And the second is really trying to communicate the quality improvement. I think, before I tried Bombas, I didn't know that socks could truly be amazing. And that's something we hear, from a lot of our customers, that they didn't realize how much better socks could be than what they had experienced to date. And so we focus obviously on delivering great quality product, but as we think about all of the places we're talking to customers on the acquisition front, we're talking about specific features that are major upgrades, like for example, our seamless toe, which removes the friction that you would get from a seam in a sock. On the retention side, we continue to reinforce that message. And then we focus quite a lot on customer support, which we call customer happiness. So we have what's called the 100% happiness guarantee, which is basically, if you're not happy with the product for any reason, you can contact our team and we will replace it, refund it, sort of do what it takes to make sure that you're happy with your experience. And so I think mission and product, high quality products, are really the two threads that go through every single thing we do. And I think, our hope is the consistency with which we deliver on both of those is what sets us apart.
Yeah, fantastic. You touched upon raising awareness, right? I mean, in the world today, that consumers tend to associate themselves with brands which believes in something, right? So that could be, for example, I would associate myself with a brand that believes in sustainability, right? And as a brand, I believe it is their responsibility to make me aware of their mission and their vision, right? And I tend to move on the longer part of the journey and be loyal to that brand. And Kate, I'm glad that you mentioned that, because oftentimes one of the mistakes that brands do is that they have fantastic vision, but they fail to communicate that to their consumers, right? And now we are moving towards more and more, having a life that is purposeful for us and also the environment around us. So we need clearly raise awareness as a brand going forward, and then consistency, of course, which is a great point. To do brilliant customer engagement, you need to consistently build great products and also consistently communicate well enough and to create excellence. And Kate, you touched upon quality of product a bit here and there. Of course, quality of product along with quality of engagement is key to retain the customers. So the question is, how important is the D2C element for your audience engagement and for your overall success?
So we were a digitally native company. We started entirely in e-commerce, and that remains today the vast majority of our business. And for our category, it really, we think, is a great model for a pretty wide variety of reasons. We do have a small wholesale footprint with a few retailers that we think are really aligned with our core values and customer promise. So we've been quite selective about the partners that we work with to expand that footprint.
Fantastic. I do have two parts left, the innovation part and the future of retail. So let's start with innovation. Okay, I'm going to pack two questions in one. What are the different trends or opportunities or technologies that you were excited about? Number one, and number two would be, technology, being an enabler for a lot of brands out there. How is it helping Bombas specifically to solve all the challenges that you have there?
So I would say in the 8 years that I've been at Bombas, the central role of not just technology but data, I think it's gotten more and more critical. And when I think about the evolution of my team, I mentioned the data and analytics team as in my organization, but almost 10% of my team is in a part of the team called data platform, which is basically all about how are we ingesting modeling data and making it available for internal use. And so that, I think that just speaks to quite how central that is to our business. I would say at the moment, the two areas we're probably most focused from a data and technology perspective are really upgrading our product data. So really expanding the number of attributes that we're able to look at and have available for use through different, pulling it one through more of the customer experience, but also improving our own ability to understand differences in how products are performing, how customers are experiencing them with quite a lot more granularity. And then the second major data initiative is around customer data, and in particular first-party customer data, given the evolving consumer privacy landscape.
Yeah, definitely. I'm when you talk about data, of course, the past few months, every retailer, every brand out there was screaming about, the death of the cookies, right? And there are regulations keeps on coming from the government, from companies like Apple and Google over and over again. In 2018, everybody are freaking out about GDPR, right? And then, you keep on suggesting, there is zero-party data, there is first-party data. Give importance to that, so that you really don't have to worry about changing regulations that comes from the government, and also the regulations, of course. For a company like yours and many companies out there, getting the preferences of the users from the very beginning of the customer onboarding journey is really key, right? So even for retail, right, what color socks would you like, right? I mean, do you prefer pink or blue? And then consumers are happy to give that to you, right? Because they want to get the right product recommendations. And that's why, we all have this way of getting this data in, so that companies can provide relevant recommendations and move on in a very exceptional way in the customer journey of your consumers. And, just one more question on that data piece. If you can share with the audience today about any of the personalized recommendations that you do through first-party data, just on a high level.
I think I'm trying to think of the best example. I would say we're a bit earlier in this journey, to be honest. So we're not yet in the realm of sort of deep personalization. We're in sort of the gray area, I would say, between segmentation and personalization. But it's something that we've really seen improve as we've sort of moved in that direction. We have seen definitely improvements in response rate of customers to what we are showing them, and also probably as critically, especially coming from Braze, reducing unsubscribe rates, or reducing kind of the number of people that are saying, kind of this isn't relevant to me in a more active way. Yeah, absolutely. Because you've talked about the unsubscriber way, and also, because of the mission that you talked about in the beginning, one of the examples that, oftentimes marketers, we are so much into getting opt-ins, right? We don't think about opt-outs. And one of the brand campaigns that I really, really like is that one of the flower delivery brands here in the UK. So what they have done during the Mother's Day, not for everyone, that's not an occasion to celebrate. So they gave their consumers the opportunity to opt out, so they don't receive any communications on Mother's Day, right? And it was one of the thoughtful marketing movements, I believe, that has ever happened. Yes.
And I see, Kate, a lot of brands are adopting that strategy now for Father's Day.
Yes.
And so it's something that I think we all should be considerate of, right?
Yes.
So we engage with our consumers. Even in the previous session, we heard consumers are human, right? So I think we should move towards that arena as well, so that we all can stay human as well. Okay. Kate, I have one more topic to talk to you about, which is the future of retail, right? What are you excited about the future of retail, and how should you think brands should be prepared?
What am I excited about? So, something that drew me to the D2C model specifically was the ability to really own the entire customer experience, and to be able to use real-time feedback and data, as we've just talked about, to improve the products we're offering, to improve our relationships with customers, and to really sort of be with the customer kind of the whole way through their journey with us. And I think that is something that even with the evolving privacy landscape, or actually potentially accelerated even by the changing privacy landscape, I think that the folks that do opt in, I think are going to be like, that's quite powerful, right? It's kind of a different level of engagement with the brand, and so I'm pretty excited about that flywheel sort of continuing to move.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, D2C explosion, right? So there are so many opportunities for brands out there to create that a relationship with their consumers directly, right? And also understanding their consumers' needs and wants, and also as and when they understand more, your consumers are the one who can give direct feedback about your products. Number one, they can give feedback about how you are engaging, and this would also be an opportunity for brands to directly test and experiment and also gamify the experiences, so that as a brand they are elevating the customer experiences on a full front. Kate, we talked quite a lot today about from the beginning, changing consumer behavior and preferences. We talked about elevating customer experiences. We also talked about customer engagement on the activation side. We also talked about the retention piece. We touched upon innovation and also the future of retail. With that, I want to thank you for taking the time to join us today, Kate, and thank you for sharing all those insights as well. Thanks for joining us. And I do see that if there are any questions from the audience, I believe that we do have time to take one or two. Carrie, if you are there, I want to hand it back over to you as well.
Oops. I am here, but apparently I had my camera covered. Sorry about that. It looks like nothing in the Q&A, but if you had any wrap-up questions, we can take those too.
Yeah, I believe that's all the questions that we have. So if there are no questions, I believe there is one question that just came from the audience. Kate, it's from Jack. Are you looking into behavioral data? Would you like to answer that?
Yeah, I'm gonna just assume that you're talking about behavioral data from third-party vendors, and the answer is not currently. It's something we've talked about. Our general understanding is that it's quite expensive, and what we have seen, at least on the acquisition side of things, and we're not sure yet if this translates, is that generally when we've paid for sort of better target, what should theoretically be better targeting, that we've not actually seen the uptick that we need in response rates to sort of pay for quite how expensive that data is. So currently not something that we use if you're talking about external third-party behavioral data.
And I believe it's just a follow-up comment from Jack again. He says translating first-party data on site. I believe it's just a comment.
Yeah, I see that. So we do, I would say right now we mostly incorporate behavioral data through our CRM approach, as well as through any paid retention marketing that we do there. We pull in quite a lot of behavioral data. On site we do some, but it's definitely an area that we plan to do quite a lot more in the coming months and years.
All right, fantastic. We don't
and Kate, I was just gonna have to say, personally, my sister-in-law used to work for a shelter that actually received Bombas socks regularly, and you really did see the folks come in, and they were so appreciative, and sometimes they be rocking two pair, because in Wisconsin it gets a little cold here in the winter. So yeah, really seeing, because the family would help out and stuff, and is really, really cool to see that in person firsthand, just to see that come to fruition on both ends.
Yeah, that's, I've seen it myself, but I always love hearing it from others. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Oh yeah, I was like, oh, Bombas, I gotta tell her. As of course, every summit I MC on, I have to make them all about me just for a little bit here and there.
Love it. Thank you.
And also Jack says thanks and love Bombas. So that's, I believe that.
Thanks, Jack.